Ladies and gentlemen, the Starfield review is here. I know that it has been a long time coming, but at last I have played the game to completion, so... Spoilers. Starfield is an odd beast, in so many ways awesome and yet awful all at once, so I'll start with the awesome. The Constellation characters are interesting to the point that I actually bothered bringing them along for a lot of the game, and they are not nearly the nuisance that companions are in previous Bethesda titles. They don't get stuck in doorways or glitch into the floor quite as much, at least in my experience. All around, the companions are fine, and I look forward to seeing what they do with them in Elder Scrolls 6. The gunplay is decent and all around serviceable. I'm not the biggest shooter fan, thus perhaps I'm not the most qualified judge, but I found that with the boost pack, the gunplay is pretty fun. The exploration is a lot of fun. Jumping system to system, landing on worlds, and hunting up dinos or pirates for loot feels impactful, especially when you are short of credits or need that new upgrade for your gun or suit. I've heard some people complain that exploration feels repetitive, that there is too much fast travel. I personally don't see this because the game delivers that feeling of vastness that you got from Daggerfall, where you stepped out of the starter dungeon and started towards the nearest village, and you kept walking. And 10 minutes later, you pull up your map and realize that you have moved a fraction of an inch towards that village, and you realize that if you don't fast travel, you're going to take forever to get there. Because the world is just that gigantic, and any game that courts good comparisons to Daggerfall is alright in my opinion. Speaking of which, let's talk about verticality for a moment. This game has both mantling and flight via the boost pack, which allows you to do some pretty cool things, like flying all the way to the top of a temple instead of grinding that jump button so that you can cheese the geometry in Skyrim so that you can reach the absolute tip-top of High Hrothgar. Is it perfect? No. Like Daggerfall, you tend to get the feeling that everyone uses standard template constructs to make the buildings and many of the dungeons. Outposts. But just as it didn't really bother me there, it doesn't really bother me here that much. However, your tastes may differ from mine, and if you didn't like that about Daggerfall, you won't like it in Starfield. I have complicated feelings on the ships. In some ways they're awesome, and in others not so much. Ship combat is fun, but it does feel kind of janky. Who would have thought that this would be what Toddy meant by saying that the ship combat would be similar to Battletech? However, thankfully the janky controls aren't all that Toddy took from Battletech, as the customization range is great, but very cost-prohibitive early game, and you will have to grind like an actress on Harvey Weinstein to actually be able to afford anything decent. Stealing a ship is not as easy as you might think, because you have to take out that ship's engines, which will require a skill, and you will have to destroy all of its buddies, and then you have to get close enough to see the whites of their eyes so that you can finally dock and finally get aboard and take out the surviving crew. And after you do that, you will have to make sure that your piloting skill is high enough, because if it's not, you just wasted your time. All around, I feel that if this game ever gets a sequel, that combat, especially ship combat, could use some fine-tuning. On the visual side of things, the game is beautiful, right up until you look at a human being. Bethesda has always had this problem, and so the characters look a little plasticky, but overall, the game is very pretty. And now I turn my baleful gaze towards the character creation and the as-traversy. The character creator is alright, I guess. The return of backgrounds and traits is nice, and it makes you feel like your character is someone with actual experience, unlike the Dragonborn, who apparently had no life up to the events of Skyrim. The sliders are fine, and you can make a character that looks decent, so that's nice. And here's where things go downhill. I have been left with no choice by Bethesda but to address the pronouns things. Bethesda. What in the name of the nine were you thinking? I know that you are out of Maryland, and are thus disconnected from the rest of the country and are insulated from the general public, so allow me to provide a little illumination on why a lot of your fans, myself included, are pissed. You know how I mentioned the whole being insulated by a coastal commie city thing? Yeah, most Americans, not to mention the rest of the English-speaking world, don't like having their language used to reprogram us into accepting someone else's fantasies, and for the fence-sitters shrilling and shilling in the comments, isn't the point of transitioning to eventually transition into whatever gender you want? So if you turn your character into a chick, and no one is stopping you from doing that, why don't you just turn your character into a chick if you want to? It's no big deal. It doesn't affect you. Okay, then I can mod out the pronouns thing, right? How dare you, you bigot! Ray! Nexus has banned mods that contain transphobia and hate speech before. Look up the Battletech or Spider-Man fiascos if you don't believe me. My glorious shiny pated patron saint Az of Heels vs. Babyface has received no small amount of flack for calling this garbage out, to which I would only say, remember my dude, the flack is always thickest over the target. The looting system is not great, and I wish that people would stop messing with stuff that isn't broken. And this is no exception. Put it back the way it was, Bethesda, or else. Crafting, customization, and outpost buildings. The weapon customization is fun and impactful, and the same is true of the suits. However, here's where my boundless enthusiasm ends. I hate outposts with a passionate fury. Bethesda, I just want a place to store my loot and crafting materials. That's it. Outposts are just an excuse to make you spend hours gathering resources just so that you can spend more time building shit you will look at once and never again. This mechanic could have been cool if it wasn't basically just one long fetch quest. I hated it in Fallout 4, and I hate it here. Enough said. The quests, spoilers, they're a mixed bag. Some, like the Crimson Fleet quests, are excellent. I played it where I infiltrated the fleet and played it straight to the end, taking down Delgado and the fleet to be heralded as a hero by all. And some of the side quests are pretty fun, not quite as memorable, but still decent. And then we come to the main quest. Oh boy. It starts well, and the middle is fine, but the ending is not great. Pretty much it's we end with questions rather than answers because screw closure. And screw actually making a statement. And here's some hippy-dippy transhumanist crap, and oh, there's no aliens in the game, so have fun with that, but hey, you get space magic and get to turn into a Starborn, that thing you've been fighting for the whole game at the end. And you get to fart into another universe, but that's cool, right, guys? Right? I don't care for the ending, mostly because it's not one. I know that I wanted to make a bunch of decisions just to have them undone by a multiversal fart ball. I know I just am going to love replaying the main quest and doing everything over, removing all consequences for my actions. 10 out of 10 game, guys! The music is there, and I'm going to rant a little bit more here before I go. Bethesda, what happened to make you lose Jeremy Soul's number? I'm sure that Inon Zur is cheap and all, but he's a straight-up discount Hans Zimmer. It sounds exactly the same as half a dozen other sci-fi theme songs you've probably heard in the last couple of years. So in closing, the game is far from perfect, but it's decent, and I would say it's solid overall, even awesome at times. A solid 8 out of 10 game. But with that said, I think you might want to wait for it to go on sale. That's all I've got for today, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Pete, the Heretical Nerd, signing off.